What is your name?
No unfair questions.
My lawyer and longtime friend Marty Lipton is here, and Marty has always brought me up.
He's
with
my
the
lawyer, too.
Yeah. Oh. You
He's
pay more than I
He's
pay.
everybody's lawyer. What are you talking about?
But he has always said you got to have full disclosure. And I've kind of tried to do that my whole life. So I have to say to all of you, I am really not an unbiased questionnaire of this guy, because this is one of my heroes in life. This is somebody who I've been very fortunate. People talk about the best thing, what happens in life, and it's been getting to know people, and there are people here with like Johnny Rosenwald, et cetera, who has been even a hero longer because he's older. So this man is a hero, and I happen to love him. So it will be, I won't be unbiased. Though I will try to ask some pointed questions. And the first question, Ken, that I'd like to ask you, which a number of people have asked me to do, is why do you move the ball in the rough?
To get a better chance at hitting a good shot.
Okay. Just wanted to get that out on the table.
Why do I say I have a 4 when I actually had a 5? I want a better score.
He's always had an eraser on his pencil. But one of the things that I really want to say to everybody here is read this book. Everybody gets books when they come to these things and everything else, and I am biased, but I got to tell you, read this book. And when you get done reading this book, give the book to your kids, your sons, your son-in-laws, everybody to read it. It is one of the really true stories about what this country can offer and what it can do for people. And I think we got to just keep getting this book around. And I'm not on commission. I don't get any money. You can take an extra book if you want to. My son John
I'll give you a deal on volume, okay?
can do it. But in all seriousness, make the young people read this book. And I think it'll give them an understanding of what this country is. Seriously, Ken, my first question, and I got this going through reading the book, and also we've traveled with our wives around the world twice in different things. And you start out in the book, and you talk about the book of what your faith has meant to you and how this has been such a guiding thing. Right. And I can attest it. Nikki and I were with Elaine and Ken in Bora Bora, which is a very lovely place. Don't expect too much activity, but it's very quiet, very lovely. And when you talk about faith and Ken going to Mass, which he does every day, I can attest to the fact that he had a young kid come in a small boat with an outboard motor to pick him up, go 25 minutes by boat to get to shore, where you were lucky to get a taxi to take you 20 minutes so where he can keep his faith and make Mass on a Saturday afternoon. Not only does he talk the talk, he walks the walk. So why don't we start out by talking?
First of all, actually, I was looking for sites for a new Home Depot in Bora Bora. That's
well, you conned
okay. I mean, a little business never hurts.
Well, you conned us.
Let me tell you about my faith. It's a personal thing. And it's probably the most important thing in my life. Nobody can compete with it. I look at my life, and I have to say there had to be more than serendipity. There had to be more than luck or hard work. There had to be things happening in my life, being born to my mother and father, with the humblest, no education, values like you wouldn't believe, incredible values. And as I look back in my life, my 3 sons, my wife, it's clear to me there's a scheme here. There's a theme that runs through it all. And Lenin says that religion is the opiate of the masses. Well, I can tell you, it is addictive, and I can also tell you it takes away a lot of pain from time to time. And more importantly, to me, my faith gives me the inspiration and the courage to move on. And I also think, frankly, that some of what Elaine and I do is driven by the belief of what we read in Scripture. To them that much is given, much is expected. I mean, frankly, I think that if all of us, and I read both Testaments, the Old Testament, because I mean, your guy may be, the Jews that are here, your guy may be right and my guy may be right. I'm hedging my bet. I'm covering both of them, okay? I'm not going to mess around, you know. For an extra 20 minutes a day, I read the other one, so not a bad bet. But I really believe that there are lessons in the Bible that if you adhere to them can stand you in good stead in business. The golden rule, do unto others as you have others do unto you. We get carried away in business, particularly those of us that do deals like Ira and I, where we get carried away, where we got to best the other guy. We got to walk away and say, hey, I'm pretty good. I got more from him than I thought I was going to get. I learned early on that letting the other guy think he bested you brings him back for the next deal. And so you might not make a lot on one deal, but if you do a bunch of deals collectively, and Ira, I'm boasting, I've never done business with anybody who wouldn't do business with me again. That's goodwill. You know, I don't understand people working their butts off to develop a relationship only to have it destroyed by getting an extra 05 or getting an extra couple of $100 million or whatever it is out of the deal. So my faith, I'm proud of it, and it's precious to me. Now, having said that, the most spiritual people I know don't believe in God. The people that I know that have done so much for the fellow man, many of them, some of them, it's incredible. They profess atheism, but and I tell them every once in a while, you're no more of an atheist than I am, my God. But there are people there, so be careful of those of us that wear our religion on our sleeves. Okay?
Thank you. You've talked a lot at length about, you know, your love for this country, and you write about it. It's all laid out there, and your firm belief that this is the greatest country in the world. What's your biggest concern today for the America today, and has the American dream changed since you've lived it?
Let me give you a reference point. My freshman year in college at Bucknell, I had an economics course, and on a Saturday morning, we had Saturday morning classes, the professor said he mauled my name out. There's 200 kids in the room. He says, Mr. Langone, I want to see you. I go, and oh my God. He had given us an exam the week before, and he threw the exam book on the desk, and he said, that's the worst English I've ever read in my life. So start with that. Can you imagine me thinking about writing a book after my English was so bad that the guy couldn't understand it? I mean, that's improbable. I mentioned that example as a reference point. Michael Ovitz came up to me. I knew who he was. I didn't realize he knew who I was. I was on a machine out at the Allen conference, and he came up to me and says, you ought to write a book. And I said, he knows me, but I'm not going to write a book. He says to me, no, you ought to write a book. I said, no, I'm not interested. Long story short, he made some calls, and all of a sudden, Random House is calling me. They want to come talk to me. No, I'm not doing it. And we went back and forth for a year and a half. And then in early 16, I was watching Bernie Sanders like the Pied Piper. And it scared the hell out of me when I saw the kids I don't mind quitting after you start a race, but how do you quit before you've begun a race? And I'm watching these kids buying into this crap, okay? This junk. And pardon me, if you're a socialist, I apologize in front, but that's what I think of what you believe. And I thought to myself, holy smokes, don't they get it? Look at me. My dad was a plumber, 8th grade. My mother was a cafeteria worker, 7th grade. They lived from paycheck to paycheck. All this happened in America. And all of it happened because there was a chance to make a buck. I am not apologetic. People say, well, how'd you start? I wanted to make money. Now, if that's sinful, then I'm a sinner. But I wanted to make money, and so any way I could make a buck, I did. But the book came out of the fact that the greatest thing we have going for us in this country, in my opinion, is capitalism. Look at the jobs we create. Look at the we have 3,000 kids today, 3,000 kids that barely got out of high school at Home Depot. They came to Home Depot as their first job, pushing carts from the parking lot, that's where you start, or helping people load up their cars. 3,000 of them that are multimillionaires and still working for Home Depot. Now, it helps if your stock goes up like it did for the last 30 years, but the fact is, we got to make sure we bring everybody to the party. The huge risk in America today, in my opinion, is income inequality. And you're not going to close that gap by the government. You're going to close that gap by the Facebooks, the Microsofts, the Home Depots, the Walmarts, the Staples, you name it, where you can bring people in, and if they're willing to work like hell and work smart and have some luck every once in a while, they got a good shot at living a good life. And I think that's, to me, why I was so passionate about capitalism and what it did for me. I can only, your own experiences are your best experiences because you lived them. The opportunity to do good in capitalism is spectacular. If you want to know the opposite, look at Cuba, look at Venezuela, look at Russia, okay? We want to be careful, though. Why did the people at the lower end of the economic spectrum buy into that nonsense? Because the gap was so wide, they saw no way out, and they gave up. All of us that have been blessed or are blessed to have influence on helping people have better lives, it's in our selfish interest to do it. That's why I wrote the book.
Steve Wolf, who couldn't be here today, asked, why is the political process so broken in Washington, which I think is, we all would agree, is continuing to the problem you're talking about. And what seems to be total ineptitude on the half of both parties. What do we need to get the nation's best and brightest to run to office?
Well, let me say this. I was talking the other night to a very smart lady, night before last, and she was waxing eloquently on what a horrible human being Donald Trump is. And I said, well, take that as a given. I'm not going to argue with you. Take that as a given. I may not agree with you. Ask yourself the question, if he's that bad, then to be elected President of the United States was a very draconian thing. You're missing the point. Donald Trump is the fever. Donald Trump is the thing that says something's wrong in your body. What's wrong in your body is the American people saying, I'm fed up, I've had enough, and I'm going to do something really, really wild. If you think about what this guy did in that campaign, my God, when that episode with him and Bully Bush, talking about not liking his heroes shot down. He likes heroes that don't get shot down when he's talking about McCain or Bush. I can go on and on. The fact of the matter is, the American people, the little people, and I don't mean that pejoratively because I consider myself of little people, my mother and father. The little people are saying, what the hell's going on here? When are you going to start thinking of me? Look at public education in America today. I can tell, I was a horrible student. In fact, I was a non-student. I sort of slid through and got my diploma. It turned out I was pretty good with numbers, and I still am. But if I hadn't had that, we know my English was terrible because the guy in college told me it sucked. And the point is, when are we going to address this serious problem of public education? It's disgusting. Of the 30 most developed nations on earth, we rank 28th in results, and we rank first in money spent per student. We're spending the money, and we're not getting the results. The fact, Ira, is, and I don't mean this, it's a horrible thing to say, I'm convinced the wrong people run for public office. But you or me or John Rosenwald or Marty Lipton, we wouldn't dare go near that cesspool, and that's what it is, a cesspool. It's a cesspool of bad behavior. It's a cesspool of deception and lying. And I'm sure I'm going to annoy some people here by this remark. I didn't vote for Obama. I didn't vote for him at all. Twice. But thank God America showed that we could elect a black president, and we did. That's a tribute to all of us as Americans, whether you voted for him or not. To me, he could have gone down as one of the great presidents of all time if he'd have done one thing, to say, I'm going to focus on education, because it turns out most of you people in this room, I'll bet, send all your kids to private schools. And why don't you send them to public schools? Because you want them to get a good education, that's why. And you know they're not going to get one in public schools. But he could have been probably the greatest president if he'd have said, I'm going to make sure. Now, what does that mean? It ain't good politics, because he's got to take on the teachers union. There's a problem. So, Ira, I certainly have no interest in diving in, and I plead guilty. But until we as a nation understand that what happened in '16 was the American people effectively engaging in a revolt. 7 o'clock election night, I said, Elaine, I'm going to bed early. I don't want to see her win. Who the hell would? 7 o'clock that night. Guess what? The American people spoke. And this crap about her getting 3 million more votes? Look at the votes by color across the United States. It's red all over. Take out New York and take out LA, game, set, match. Anyway. Best guy we ever had, Harry Truman. I think history will dictate he's the finest president this country ever had. And he made a lot of mistakes, but boy, he did a lot of good stuff.
Talking about these things, do you fear that there will be any kind of ripple effects in the next election cycle? I mean, as an example, a lack of turnout because they've lost faith in the political process, a backlash against Republicans because of the media, Trump's behavior, media coverage, a continuation of a movement towards Sanders. I mean, I heard somebody say the other day that the new Sanders, and anyone who lives in New York finds this difficult to even think about, but the new Sanders in 2020 could be de Blasio, because he would run on a program of just entitlements. If you like what you're getting, we're going to give you more. If the other guys are going to take it away from you. We're just going to constantly tax the rich. I mean, are you worried about how far this can, and what can stop it?
First of all, you got me in an area, Ira, that I don't know a damn thing about politics, okay? I work with these guys and stuff. I've been disappointed by more politicians than I've felt better about. One of the problems people have around Trump advising them is they say, you shouldn't do that, Mr. President. And he said, wait a minute, that's just what I did in the campaign and I won. How can you tell me I'm doing something wrong? He acted then the way he's acting now. And he was very democratic. He hit all 16 of them. You know, they all got their chance to get beat up, and he did it. And he did some what was presumed to be terrible, not nice things, and he won the election. So I don't know. I think the one thing about Trump's election is we better be careful. It could be de Blasio. I know one thing, I would not bet now that it won't be, because if they did it with Trump, maybe the next guy's going to even be worse than Trump. The answer is, what are you doing to address the disease that gives you the fever? Now, you mentioned one thing, you mentioned entitlements. Here's an example. I guess part of the reason people are writing the book is because I made some money. Why the hell do I get a check every month from the U.S. government for Social Security? And my wife gets a check. We get $4,000 a month from the government. That is an absolute disgrace. Now, I listen to my buddies down in Florida, the retirees. Well, it's my money. I paid it in. Stop it. Stop it. You buy fire insurance on your house, you say, dear God, please, don't let me have a fire. I got insurance, but I don't want a fire, please. At the end of the year, you haven't had a fire. You don't pick up the phone and say to Allstate, give me my premiums back, I didn't have a fire. I won big. All of us have to get away from this nonsense that this is ours. Figure it as one more tax. Until we get people with courage down there, take the easy ones first. Take the low-hanging fruit, the fat cats. Nothing in my life is going to change if you stop sending me those checks. I probably should pay more taxes. I live in Florida. I have a beautiful home in Florida. My legal residence is New York for a variety of reasons. A, I love it here. It's the greatest city on earth. I don't want to have to look at a calendar. Oh, 181 days. Elaine, we're going to stay in the Ramada Inn at Newark Airport tonight because she'd say to me, you stay in the Ramada Inn, I'm staying in the St. Regis in New York. What I'm saying is, I won. And part of my victory was being in this city. What the hell's going to happen to America and New York if guys like me all move out? And you know the important thing? It's in the abstract. Nothing in my life changes by me paying taxes in New York. I'd like it better if they used them wisely, but you can't have everything in life. So my point is, Ira, the politicians, let me stop. How many people in this room are for term limits? Raise your hand. How many people want term? Raise them high.
They want what?
Term limits. Look. The last poll on term limits was in January, the Rasmussen poll. 84% of the American people want term limits. 9% don't. Why don't we have term limits? Because the people that block us from having term limits are afraid they might have to go out and get a job after they're done. There's a lot of things we need to fix, but we're not going to fix them if we all don't have skin in the game. So, okay?
When Ken talks about...
I piss a lot of people off, by the way, but that's okay. Just keep shopping Home Depot and everything will be fine.
When Ken talks about that politics is not his expertise, he was partially right, because in the year 2016, we all talk, my friend Scott over here, about that we broke the streak that the Chicago Cubs finally won the World Series, which was a big thing for any of us from Chicago. But it was also, Ken broke a streak that year, because even though Trump may have been the third guy he was in favor of, and he finally had a winner, the last winner he had before that was FDR in his second term.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Bet the other way from me. I've not been very good at that stuff.
No.
Although I didn't work for Trump, but I did send him a check. Only because the guy that asked me for the check was a good friend, and I'd hit him up
and you owed
for
him.
9 losers in the past, so I figured.
You owed him. Ken, talk a little bit about, there's nobody that has done more in giving back And I really feel with you, you just feel this is a pleasure. Every time I see you and Elaine doing something or trying to help people or lift people up, or whether it's working up in Harlem, the Harlem Children's Zone, or things like this, or it's the Langone Medical Center. By the way, if you ever have to go in the emergency room at NYU Langone Med, use his name, it does get you quicker. So,
Also get you a bigger bill, too, all right?
but talk a little bit about this. I mean, where this came from and, you know, how you feel about it. And, you know, we'll get around, we'll talk about deals in a minute. But, I mean, I think what's more important for all of us is the philosophy you had and maybe what we can all do more to help make this country the great country that it was and which we all hope it will be.
Let me shock you. By my father's standards, I'm not charitable. My father's standards. Let me explain why. The first money I gave that had a couple of zeros in back of it, I gave to Bucknell University, my alma mater, and it was great for me, and it did so much for me, I can never repay it. And we used to go, the reason I like Blue Bloods is that Sunday lunch every year. And we used to go to my mother's, Elaine and I and the three boys, every Sunday at 1 o'clock. And my mother would sit by the seat closest to the kitchen so she could keep bringing the food in, and my father on the other end, and the three boys on one side, and Elaine and me on the other. And this one Sunday, Elaine says, Ken, why don't you, my father went to the 8th grade, and his greatest possession was when he took me to Bucknell in my freshman year. He bought a windbreaker with Bucknell on the back of it. And that was his proudest possession. He had a son that was going to college. I mean, and they had a struggle for that to happen. But anyway, this Sunday, Elaine says, Ken, why don't you tell Pop-Pop what we did for Bucknell? And what do you mean? I said, well, Dad, Elaine and I are starting to give some money to Bucknell. And he put the fork down. I'll never forget it. And he said, what'd you give up? What do you mean, what did I give up? What'd you give up? I said, I gave up nothing. He said, real charity is when you go without something for somebody else. That's charity, okay? Now, unfortunately, Elaine and I are known for the money. What I'd rather be known for, and frankly what I'm very proud of for both her and me, like you and Nikki, the time we give up for charities. And I can only tell you this, all the time I give, it comes back to me in incredible ways. And you mentioned John Rosenwald and Marty Lipton being here. Marty deserves the credit for my being involved at the medical center. And John was chairman before me. And one of the driving forces behind my taking the job when Marty came to see me was Marty being chairman of the university. I knew I had a worthy guy in the trenches with me. John having been chairman before me, I have enormous respect for these men. I profess love. That's we either love or we kill as Italians, so you better want to be loved by us, okay? But we don't get enough credit for the sacrifice we make. Not one thing in my life changed by us writing those checks. Planes, cars, you name it, we got it. Okay? Nothing changed. And guess what? We've made more than that amount of money back since we gave it, so we replenished it. But time is finite. If I take a day and devote it to a charity, I don't know how long my life is going to be, but whatever the old man upstairs says it's going to be, he doesn't add an extra day because you gave a day, well, you can't prove it. That's why I say this. But time is precious. And those of us that have some talent and those of us that have the time, that's where this challenge, that's where the charity really is. These politicians, I feel your pain. Where are the Clintons? Where is the Bushes? All these problems in America, they're all telling us how everything they want to do for us while they want our vote. And all of a sudden they leave, and where the hell are they? I don't see them. So I'm beating up on politicians again. But I would rather be remembered for the time I've given than the check I've written. But I will tell you this, an interesting thing. In November of 1957, I was at NYU at night. The Tuesday night before Thanksgiving was my last class. And I walked out. I had $4 in my pocket. I used to go take the subway, Lexington Avenue, down from Grand Central to go to the business school used to be on the other side of Trinity Place, downtown, in an old building. You froze in the winter and you sweat to death in the summertime. There was no heat, the big old ugly building. And I used to go to a Horn and Harder on the corner and have a cup of coffee and a roll for a quarter. And this night I came out and I had $4 in my pocket. And there was a guy there panhandling. And I gave him $1. It was the first time in my life I ever had this feeling. I felt so good about myself. I really felt special. And I went home and I had to tell Elaine, you have no idea what it'll do for you to feel like you've done something to help somebody else. It's a win-win. Trust me. You want to get things done, have faith in yourself. You want to have faith in yourself that extends yourself for other people. I look at, as I say, you and Nikki. I look at John. I look at Marty. I look at all these wonderful people that give and get involved. This is genius. This is America. By the way, philanthropy is decidedly American. There's no place on earth that does it like we do it. No place. It's an American thing.
Well, Tocqueville, in his writings after he came to the United States, that was the main thing that he wrote about, the big difference in America and Europe. And that's one of the reasons why I think if you will check United Ways, you'll find that the main award that they can give in a year is the Tocqueville Award.
Right.
By the way, I don't think I have thanked you for that $1 you gave me that night because I really...
I thought it was you, but frankly, you were a lot thinner than I, right?
But it really made a difference.
That's why I didn't recognize you.
I will tell you all, because I don't want to, you're going to read the book, but read the stories about Kenneth Bucknell and I mean, it's wonderful stories about how he got in, how he stayed in. That was one of the great miracles of all time, is how he stayed in Bucknell, and how it took, just a lucky break of a couple people in the administration, because who knows what would have been totally different. What advice? Let's talk about the successful deals. I'm not going to embarrass you by asking you about your bad deals.
I need 6 months to talk about the bad deals, okay? So I haven't got that kind of time.
Yeah, I mean, we know about your investment.
And I have them, by the way. Believe me, I've got them in spades.
Yeah. But, other than your good deals like Home Depot or investing in Rebel or 13 Partners and things like that.
Yeah, by the way, I'm an original and I'm still in, and I've never taken a nickel out, by the way. We're happy campers.
But what do you see different in Wall Street today? I mean...
Wall Street doesn't exist today. It's computers, it's all this stuff around. Now, maybe what was here before, and I tell this story in the book. My father-in-law was in Wall Street, and he got me a series of interviews. May of '62, the market crashed. It was the biggest crash since '29. And I said, I was just getting out of the Army. I was one of those 100,000 warriors they call back, that when Khrushchev built the wall around Berlin, we were going to go knock the wall down. Just 100,000 guys like we wouldn't know a hammer from a saw, and we were going to knock walls down. So I got out, and I went all over Wall Street. And Wall Street was mass exodus. They were throwing them overboard. And I met a man by the name of Maurice Hart at New York Hanseatic. Anybody ever knew him or not? He was a friend of my father-in-law's. He was a bond trader. but a very successful one. And he said to me, sit down, kid. He said, let me give you the lay of the land. He said, we got Jewish firms for Jewish kids. We got WASP firms for WASP kids. We put the Irishmen on the floor of the exchange as clerks, and we put the Italians in the back office as clerks. You're better than that. Go find a job in some institution and learn the business, and then come back to Wall Street. And that's exactly what I did. I went to the Equitable Life, $82.50 a week, and I started. What do I think of Wall Street? It's gone. And in many respects, frankly, we're better for it. You know, first of all, the sheer size of the capital formation needs in the world are so such that you couldn't have done it. And I had the good fortune, one of the big breaks I had in business was Ross Perot selected me to be his banker. And I beat all these firms, Clark Dodge, Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, White Weld, you name it. They all wanted this business. And I've kept a tombstone. You don't even know what the hell a tombstone is. John Rosenwald and Marty, this is where you used to brag. You used to do the deal and then buy ads in the Wall Street Journal, and you put down the deal, and it looked like a tombstone. Believe it or not, there were 50-some names on that list. The only name still around is R.W. Pressbridge & Company, my old firm, and it's only survived because it went dormant. Eddie Rapper, who used to be at Bear Stearns, he was with Pressbridge before that, bought the name for $25,000 and restarted it as a bond firm, and it's still in existence. Wall Street is gone. It had to happen because I told Dick Grasso, I said, you know, you're lucky you got out of here when you did. Even though they fired you, I said, the fact is you couldn't stop the onslaught of technology. Now, that said, we now have to ask ourselves a question, how do we make sure these little companies like EDS, when I took Ross Perot public, Ira, he had 323 employees, he had $7 million in revenues, okay? Home Depot, Bear Stearns took us public in September of '81. Believe it or not, the total size of the deal was $7.2 million. We got to figure a way out to encourage small businesses and accommodate small businesses, because that's where your growth comes from.
Ken, I've heard the story about 100 times, and I laugh like crazy every time you tell the story. But I really would like you to tell everybody the story here about Home Depot when you were trying to finance the company, and
The Cadillac?
your trip to Dallas, and with Bernie and
Arthur.
I mean, this I think is just one of the great stories.
Well, Bernie and Arthur got fired from Handy Dan, which was owned by Dalen, which was run by a bad guy by the name of Sandy Sigaloff. I hope he's someplace near Elliot Spitzer when Spitzer goes, because they kind of would be good buddies. Say it like it is, okay? Anyway, so I said, Bernie had no job, no insurance, no money, 3 kids. Arthur had 3 young children. I said, Bernie, you have this idea. He wouldn't tell me. You got this idea. Let's go start a company. Well, this is the Commodore. This is the Hyatt. We had breakfast on a Sunday morning at the Peacock Alley at the Waldorf. And I said, Bernie, what are you talking about? I said, all right, we'll get the money. We'll get the money. Trust me. So I called Perot up and I said, Ross, I got these guys. I've done very well with them. They had a company called Handy Dan. Me and my clients did very well. This is the late 70s. Times aren't good. And he said, well, Bob, bring him down, bring him down. I said, okay. So I bring him down, and we meet, and he had an advisor working for him, and he said, well, let's get information. So Bernie and Arthur and I went back, and now we're going to have a second meeting in Dallas, and the deal is this. Perot's going to put up $2 million. He's going to own 70%. Bernie and Arthur are going to own 25%, and I'm going to own 5% as the third founder. Out of their 25%, anybody they got to bring to the company before we go public and they need equity would come out of the 25%. Perot's 70% was solid. Mine was. And Ross is going to give them $2 million. They're going to study America. They got 12 months to come back with a plan. And if they can't come back with a viable plan, they're going to give Perot whatever money is left, and they're going to have to go out and get a job. It was that deal. So here we are. We're now in Perot's office with Bernie and myself, and Ross is sitting there with his advisor. Well, what's the deal? What's the deal? And I said, well, I gave him the math. And I said, Ross, we're going to do everything we can to save money. The leases that these guys have on their cars, we're going to move them over to the new companies. What the hell made him think of this? What kind of car they drive? What kind of car they drive? I said, well, Arthur said, well, I drive this is 1978. Arthur says, I drive a 1971 Pontiac. And Bernie says, I drive a 1972 Cadillac. And Ross says, Cadillac? My guys drive Chevrolets, they don't drive Cadillacs. And Bernie looked at me and says, can we talk? And I said, sure. So we excused ourselves. He said, look, this guy's going to own 70%. If he's going to break my chops about a 6-year-old car, which is cheaper than if I go out and get a new Chevrolet and lease it. I said, well, look, let me handle this. So we went back in and I said, look, Ross, I said, so-and-so, his advisor, doesn't like this deal. And I said, why don't we take a breath and think about it, and we'll get back to you. So he said, okay, sure, if you're interested, call me back. So we get out of Bro's office, and we're in the lobby waiting for the elevator to go down. And Arthur's beside himself, and Bernie says, what do we do? And I said, here's what we do. I'm going to go out and raise $2 million. You guys are going to have 50%. The investors are going to have 45%, and I'm going to have 5%. And Arthur looked at me. I said, Arthur, understand something. In your business, when you can't sell something, you mark it down. In my business, when you can't sell something, you mark it up. And that's how it happened.
Oh, but finish the next part of the story where a number of years later, when
well,
you and Elaine are having
a great coincidence. The day I met Ross Perot, I was told I had 30 minutes and I shouldn't swear. Now, that's like telling me to take a vow of silence in a monastery. I mean, come on, give me a break. So that day, I'm giving you this a little bit of background because the story of Ross and me is interesting too. So Perot tells me for 29 and a half minutes what Goldman Sachs, G.H. Walker, Whitewell, all these guys are telling him. I'm looking at the clock, I'm saying, wait a minute, my 30 minutes are gone, so I'm going to blow the 30-minute rule. And the other rule was don't swear. So he says, well, what do you think? I said, Mr. Perot, that's the biggest pile of horse shit I ever heard in my life. And he rares back, and we talked for 13 hours. And I found out in those 13 hours, he and his wife, you ready? Married the same hour, the same day, the same year as Elaine and I were. So we celebrated our anniversaries together. We're having, this year we went down to, the particular year, we went down to Dallas and we were having dinner at the mansion, 4 of us. How'd those 2 guys do when they went in the hardware, hammer and saw the hardware business? I said, pretty good. Well, how good? And I said, well, Ross, I said, Forbes got you with $3 billion. If we could have done that deal, you'd be north of $20 billion. I said, what? I said, yeah, Ross, it worked out pretty good. Thank God it did.
I've always loved that whole story. What advice would you give young people today? You've got this whole change going on. You've got all these new things that none of us really know about, whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's this or the buzzwords. What would you tell a young kid to do that A, is going to college, what should he study, what should he think about, you know, does he have the same opportunities that you had coming out of Long Island?
Well, let me put it to you and Marty and John, people I know that have succeeded. The one thing they share in common, they all love what they do. I've said it and I'll say it again. If I had to pay to go to work, I would pay to go to work. I love my work so much. I love it as much today as I did the day I started 62 years ago. I can't get enough of it. People don't understand that you need to have a connection, a commitment, a passion. And please, I'd say to a kid, take the job that you can't wait to get up in the morning to go to work. You were that way. I was that way. John was at Marty. Look at Marty. God bless Marty. Marty loves what he does. And by the way, typically, if you like what you're doing, you'll do it well. That's one thing. The other thing, don't make how much money you're going to be paid the first thing you think about in looking for a job. I think this is a terrible mistake these kids make. I would go beyond that today and say to a kid, don't go to Wall Street, or such as it is. Go out and work for a small company and learn about business, learn how it works, learn all the things that are necessary. I really didn't learn. I was a security analyst and I was in Wall Street for a lot of years. I really didn't know hell about business until I got involved in these companies, these little teeny, and I learned about rent, and I learned about cost of goods sold, and I learned about benefits. Businesses are dynamic things that demand knowledge across a broad spectrum. So I would say to these kids, pursue your dream, live your dreams. And part of living your dreams is loving what you do. And if you love what you do, you're likely going to do better than if you. I couldn't think of a worse hell on earth to wake up and say, oh, Christ, I got to go to this job again today. That would be hell, okay? So that would be my...
Let's throw it out. You know, you're all tired of hearing thoughts that I have. I'd like to hear the questions that anybody here has to ask Ken.
Nice lady over here. Yes, ma'am. Hi, Sandy. How are you?
Good. My question is relating to your comment about the fever and the symptom. I think that's a great analogy of what's happening in our country today. And one of the things that's noted about our generation, or even my children's generation, is there's not really a concept of shared...
I wore him out. He's got to take a nap, okay?
of shared service. So of your generation, many men and some women in different ways were in the military or in other things like the Peace Corps. One of the things I talk about with my husband is, why don't we have in this country a requirement, not necessarily for military, but for some type of service at the age of 18 or 20 or pick the age. Have you thought through that?
Yeah. First of all, I think I served in the military twice. I wouldn't give up that time for anything. I learned a lot. I lived with men that I would never come in contact with again, and it made me a better person to be able to empathize with other people. I, honest to God, believe that Israel will survive because every kid has an obligation. Everybody's got skin in the game. The biggest mistake we made, in my opinion, was doing away with the draft. That said, I think you're right. But unfortunately, we don't have politicians who are willing, like they're unwilling to take entitlements away from me, because entitlements are the third rail of politics. We need, I think, we'll be a better nation, and I firmly believe this. I have 3 sons. My middle son, pardon me, was a real pain in the ass, okay? And he went in the Marine Corps for 4 years. It was dramatic, the change, okay? There's something about it. I'm passionate about service. And part at 82 years old of my drive is the notion of giving back. And what can I give back that's precious that I can't get back is time. And I really believe, look, this country, there's no country on earth like, there'll never be another America. We're it. For all of the things the politicians tell us is wrong, damn it, we're better off being here than any place else on earth. So my position is clear. I would strongly urge our politicians to figure a way out for people to have to give something to their country. Because I truly believe if you have to work for something, you'll respect it more than if it's just given to you. I don't know if that's the answer you want, but that's my answer. Yes, sir.
Without giving up, how can we incent more great leaders with some measure of experience to actually serve politically?
You know, part of the problem is the American people. I'm passionate about it being wrong for me to get any payments from the government. In fact, I should pay for my own health needs. I shouldn't have insurance from the government. If I want to buy private insurance, I buy private insurance. Unfortunately, when you start talking, you go to this community I live at, Lost Tree, if I want to screw the guys up in the card room, I'll walk in and say, hey, did you hear they're going to do away with Social Security if you own 2 homes? The cards go up in the air. It's my money. What are you talking about? We were at our best as a nation when we all sacrificed in World War II. We won that war as a country. Why? Because as Perot said, we didn't commit the troops until we committed the country. Everybody went to war. I remember collecting tin cans. I remember you had to put black paint on the top of your lights. They had air raid drills, and you had to put your lights out. Everything was rationed. Gas, we all went to war until we get back to the spirit of America, what it is. And it's there. It's still around. That's part of the problem. But what have we done is we've encouraged our political leaders to pander to us. I mean, it's nuts. It's absolute. I've said to a guy one time, an older guy, I said, I was talking about generational theft. Generational theft is old guys like me taking all this money, and the kid that's 21, who's going to be my age one day, prayerfully, the till is going to be empty because I got the money. It's called generational theft. I said to him, let me ask you a question. If you were on an island and you had a little bag and you had one meal left and you had your grandson with you, would you eat it or would you give it to your grandson? Oh, I'd give it to my grandson. I said, what the hell's different than about what you're doing now? That kid's not going to have a sandwich in 60 years because you're eating it now. Until we get back to a sense of spirit and a sense of community, nothing is going to work. And they all lie. The whole damn bunch of them lie. They'll tell you anything you want to hear as long as they get your vote. And they win tonight.
Or your money.
Or your money. They win tonight, and they're already campaigning for 2 years out. So there's no simple answer, but I know this much. We've got a lot of things we got to fix. I'll tell you a crazy thing. Think of this. They can't, in Congress, pass a law that says no benefits change for anybody until they're born in the year 2020. In other words, everybody alive now, we're talking about people that haven't been born yet, and we're talking about their benefits 65 years. You can't even get Congress to pass that. It's sick. So I don't know the answer, but I do know this. We better fix a lot of this stuff. And we will, by the way. I have absolute faith we will. Yes, sir. Let's do it.
You're an inspiration. Thank you.
Stop.
No, I'm telling you, this is the most enjoyable conversation I've ever been part of. Let's talk about the future.
Yeah.
What industries, what areas of business are you optimistic about for getting into?
Old people.
The
Old people, they're living longer. They need more. I mean, when kids talk about lost opportunities, the fastest growing age sector in America, you ready? Is 100 and older. Now, it starts with a small base, but the number of people going into that bracket is growing every year. We're going to live, thank God, you know, we beat the hell out of the pharmaceutical industry, and I plead guilty. I own a lot of stock in Eli Lilly and Company, and I have for a long time, so I got an axe to grind. I'm sorry. Old people, the markets, they're going to need so many new different things. Just think of that alone. The drug companies are feverishly working. How do we address diabetes, which is a serious problem in the country? Lifestyle changes. What are we going to do about making sure that we have affordable housing for everybody? And we should. We are a developed nation. No kid, no person should go to bed hungry in America. We should have to figure a way out to make sure everybody has good health care. These are all great opportunities. Every place you look, there's something to do. I like things from as basic as construction machinery. I won't give you the name of the company. It's a small company, and I'm in love with it, and I own stock in it and bonds. To exotic things like a Swiss company that's got some bug that's going to do something, because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but I got a smart guy that knows this stuff, and he says, you ought to buy the stock, so I bought the stock. You have some of it.
I bought some of it too, and I know
You don't know what you're doing
I know
either.
even
Okay,
less.
the both of us. But, and by the way, that's the other thing. Pray at the feet of knowledge and brilliance. I've always been blessed to have people around me a lot smarter than I am and work a lot harder than I do. So, but what I'm saying is these are the themes I see. Fast food, China. I had the gal in my office Monday that runs Yum China. They're opening 800 stores a year in China. They're going to have 20,000 stores. They got 7,000 now. Huge opportunity, gigantic. There's so many things, and the longer we live and the healthier we live, the more opportunities we have to accommodate a market. A declining population is a contraction of an economy. Go to Hungary. Hungary, the population, we were there last year, don't go. It was okay, but it wasn't America, all right. The population's going down. Well, guess what? You got fewer people to sell something to. It's simple math. Anything else?
Byron, you must have.
Oh, John Rosenwald. He's going to throw a curve.
Oh, okay.
Rosenwald's going to throw a curve.
Rosenwald and then Ween.
He's the best. John, let me tell you, this guy forgot more about getting money out of people's pockets than I will ever know.
I love you, pal.
love you.
Kenny, you've talked a lot about Home Depot today.
Yeah.
I happen to know from your own lips that you have told me on many occasions you get more pleasure out of what you do and have done at the medical center than at Home Depot.
Yeah.
I think it tells a side of you. Tell these folks why you feel that way.
Well, first of all, I got an ego, John. And I want to tell you, you'd be amazed the letters I get from people. I got 2 this week thanking me for what that medical center did for them. You know, there's a lot of hurt in the world. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of misery. We had our graduation, medical school graduation, Tuesday night. 120 kids. By the way, more than half are ladies. You talk about spreading it around. Substantial number of Asians, substantial number of Indians, substantial number of African Americans. We're doing it. John, money is in the abstract. You see it on a piece of paper. You don't walk around with your wealth. You got it on a piece of paper, and you get a statement once a month or whatever the hell you get. But when I get a letter from somebody, and they tell me how much they are in debt to that place for what they did and what they got, is there anything better than that? Tuesday night, every graduation, I make a very short speech, and it's canned. I do it every year because it's applicable. I tell the kids, you can put your education. By the way, bragging now, NYU Medical School is number 3 in America today. Harvard's first, Hopkins is second, and NYU is third. 12 years ago, we were 34, and 20 years ago, we were in the 50s. And we ain't done. We got 2 more notches to go. I say to the kids, you can put your education against anybody. You're set to go on to residencies or whatever you need. And the match of our kids, where they go, we know they're getting a great education. Because the match is where the residencies attach up. I said, but the one thing we can't give you, that's the most important thing for you to be a great doctor, is compassion. You're going to be sitting against somebody someday. They're in pain. They're terrified of the disease, all those things. And in some cases, you're not going to be able to help them because they're going to die. And boy, you better have compassion then. I can't tell you, Marty, I don't know where Marty is, but I've said it in the book. I took the job out of a sense of obligation and respect for Marty. I can't tell you what a difference is made in my life and how much better I feel about me. And let me tell you something about self-respect. If you ain't got it, don't expect anybody else to respect you. It's that simple, okay? So, John, all I know is I never thought when I took the job at 64 I'd have another Home Depot in my pocket. This is even better. This is even better, okay?
We'll take Byron.
Yes, hey, my buddy here. Did you give him your 10 points, your 10 surprises today? He's the best, by the way. He is the absolute best. Go ahead, Joe Byron.
Kenny, from what you said, people are going to be living longer.
Yep.
And they won't be able to work when they're 90, although you and I are working in our 80s. So that's going to be a burden on the government. There's
Right.
also the fear that artificial intelligence is going to displace a lot of workers who aren't trained for other jobs.
Yep.
So it looks like the burden on the government is going to get greater as we go forward. So there are going to be more and more people taking and fewer people paying taxes. It looks like that's a collision course. What are your comments on that?
Well, first of all, John, I think we're committing a big sin in America by saying college is a must. There's a lot of kids out there, John. I'll give you an example. My driver's son called me and wanted to get into the Ornamental Ironworkers Union. Now, what the hell do I know about ornamental ironwork? But turns out I knew somebody, this young man, who, by the way, this kid has got a work ethic that won't quit. He gets $44 an hour as an apprentice. He's guaranteed 2 hours a day at $66 an hour, and he can work on weekends at $66 an hour as well. Number one, John, we got to go back to basic education. There are going to be an incredible number of jobs available, but it's going to depend upon the competence of people to be able to do those jobs. I'm not talking about rocket science. I'm talking about kind of basic stuff, ornamental, putting curtain walls up in buildings, plumbing, electrical, you name it. So number one, I have faith that our economy is going to continue to grow and we're going to have those needs. Look, the risk of obsolescence, human obsolescence from technology is real, no doubt about it. And we're going to displace people. We're going to take people that are going to lose their jobs. Home Depot's never hired one person for minimum wage. We've got to do something about income inequality. That said, McDonald's has got a great ad running right now, America's best first job. They don't expect you to be at McDonald's forever, but let's not put these companies in such a position with arbitrary numbers that says, quote, $15 an hour, and McDonald's says we can't run our business that way. We're going to put a machine in you're going to go in like an automat. You're going to push the number in, and 2 seconds later, the hamburger is going to come out wrapped in whatever it is. That's going to happen. I do believe that if we can do a lot to move the needle in public education, it's a good start. Now, is there risk? Yeah, there's risk. Who the hell would have thought 75, 80 years ago, when everything was manual, that you brought in construction equipment and you brought in all this technology? We did it. You got to have some blind faith that good fortune will come your way. But I know this much, we are missing a bet in not equipping these kids. The other thing, frankly, Byron, is this entitlement business is a disgrace. And start with the easy one. Start with the B's. Let's go there. And the other thing is, the people that are on welfare, people that get checks from the government for doing nothing, they're paying a terrible price. And I'll tell you what the price is, self-respect. You can't feel good about yourself when you look back on your life and say, what did I do? Nothing. And all I did was, I got my money for this. We are stripping people of dignity and self-respect, and that's a horrible thing to do to another human being. Now, there's a lot of unknowns, Byron, and you and I have talked about this. I don't have all the answers, but I know a good start is elevating the quality of public education in America. That's a good start. Okay?
One thing my son has learned from me is when you promise a time to get people out, you live up to it. We promised everybody they'd be out by 12. John, I thank you and everybody at AIM for doing such a
Great job.
Great job. I do want to say one thing. Moving the ball in the rough was only a joke, because I'll tell you, this is the most straight guy on the golf course, as he is every place.
I fooled
If his
him.
ball turns over, he'll call a penalty on himself. So don't get the wrong idea. Kenny, I love you.
I love you, brother. You know how much I love you.
I just want to quickly say thank you. This was truly something special.